A wild shootout in North Carolina claims the life of 3 U.S. Marshals and 4 local municipality police departments. We will discuss what happened with that, why this is important, and, well, basically how this started and how it ended. So we've got a lot to go over with that. And other news, the protests continue as we continue to listen to white, privileged, left-wing protesters at college campuses say the things that you normally had to feed them 3 wine coolers to get them to say out loud. And they swore you to secrecy every time they did. So we'll talk about what's going on with that, some of the pushback and some of the fight back that's coming with that, and where it goes from there. The Donald is in court. That's right. And a couple different things too as we look at what's happening with the hush money case and what we go with that, as well as the immunity hearing and some of the things that we talk about with that. And just in time for us to dole out another great big dose of Ukraine aid, the Ukrainians come back and say, "We're losing again. Give us some more. Give us some more." It is going to be all of this and more over here on Contemporary. So grab some friends, tell everybody, strap yourselves in, get some snacks. And by the way, there's this other event that's going on today. I don't know if anybody knows this, but it is my birthday, and it's one of the big milestone ones as well. So if you guys want to say something, say happy birthday in the chat. Otherwise, one morning I woke up and I knew you were really gone. A new day, a new way. I knew I should see it along. Go your own way, and I'll go mine, and carry on. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. What a weird time to be alive. What a weird timeline we're having in here. And while I was very, very open and vocal about the fact that I thought that what we were seeing out of Minneapolis and the other major cities over St. George's protests, and especially what we were seeing in Kenosha, because, well, let's just point out the fact that I know the populace of Kenosha because I lived there for well over a decade, was maybe egged on by some government agencies who are trying to make the current political situation look a certain way in a certain election year. I don't think that about these campus protests. Now, I do think that what happened in 2020 led to what we're seeing with these campus protests, but I really legitimately think that this got out of the admin's hands, and even the intel agencies that so many of us have accused of sparking protests like Charlottesville and Kenosha and January 6th and everything else like that. I know we can't say too much about that on YouTube because, well, it's YouTube, but I mean, anyway, we do have a lot to go over here today, and I cut a bunch of it too just because of the fact, and there's probably going to be some more cut as we go because, well, once again, there is just a ton of stuff to go over here tonight. But it's only like 2 or 3 major topics. Like, honestly, the Trump trial is what's on the brunt of the top of this list here. And really a lot of it's repetition or videos or things like that. Luckily, I didn't have to use almost anything from the Daily Wire except for a little bit in things that I like here tonight. So we'll be talking about that. At the end of this stream, I've got some things that I like. And my things that I hate segment is almost all Biden. it was weird. I just kept, and I pulled some stuff back off on the main channel too, but it's like, okay, what am I going to do here? I was organizing earlier because I pull my tabs on Monday night, but I don't organize them until Tuesday in case there is some breaking news that goes off here. But I was just pulling stuff over to my right-hand screen over here, because that's where I gather my things I like, things I hate. And I'm like, oh, this will go on things that I hate. Oh, this is about Biden. Oh, this will go on things I hate. It just happened like that over and over and over again. So yeah, that'll be the brunt of that. It's an interesting week, that's for sure. They definitely don't want us bored coming into an election year. So let's have a little bit of fun here, by the way. And as mentioned at the top, and Dual Helix has come out to point out as well that yes, it is my birthday, and achievement unlocked. 4 decades completed. Yes, I am 40 today. In a very good place in my life right now, too. Now, you guys know the rule. Nothing personal on my channel. That is mostly because the personal people that I love in my life have chosen not to take a position behind the screen, and I respect that position for them, but I'm in a very good place in my life. I'm pretty happy with what's going on and how it is going and how it's moving. So, honestly, I probably got one of the best 40th birthday presents just by the way that life turned out than I could possibly imagine. So, thank you, by the way, for all the support that everybody has been giving out to me over the day to day, and just over the last few years since I've been doing this as well. So, anyway, we've got news to go over here tonight, and a lot of it to do, so let's see here. Mogwai says, grab some friends. Hey, come over. Wait, what's a friend? Mogwai is accusing me being 60. No, not quite there yet. With my family history, if I was 60, I'd already be on my second heart attack. One gorilla, says the Mogwai. Palmyria says 60. I thought it was 65. Yeah, you know better than that, and I know what that name is too. So, Mogwai says, grabs a blackboard and draws a straight line, then draws a branch off to show a split to Marty. This is where the timeline branched. I love that movie, by the way. And Midget B has joined us as well to say, happy birthday, cunt. Thank you, Midget B. And yes, Dual Helix again with the happy birthday over on the Rumble side. Let's get down to it because we've got so much to go. And we're going to start with the Charlotte shooting as well. I don't know why I said as well for that because we haven't done anything yet, but we're going to start with the Charlotte shooting. And reminder as always, the more you chat, the more we get promoted to the front page of whatever service we are on. So let's get to it. Charlotte shooting. Fox News reporting 4 law enforcement officers killed, 4 injured as U.S. Marshals Task Force served a warrant from Andrea Vacciano and Audrey Coughlin. 4 law enforcement officers were killed and 4 other officers were wounded by a suspect opening fire in a warrant-related gunfight in Charlotte, North Carolina on a Monday afternoon. The shooting began when a U.S. Marshals Task Force attempted to serve a warrant for firearm possession by a convicted felon. Okay, I'm kind of starting to see where this is going here. During a Monday evening press briefing, authorities said the recipient of the warrant was the one who initially opened fire. That suspect, who was later identified as 39-year-old Terry Clark Hughes Jr., was killed in the shootout, police said. Now, one of the things that I want to point out here, and thus far I've not seen any body cam footage, but as of right now, I mean, of course, in any incident report that they have, absent evidence like a body cam, that is going to be the default position is, oh, he shot at us first. And I don't know the situation. I didn't see any videos to this one. I haven't seen where this started, where this goes. Hughes was also wanted on 2 counts of felony flee to elude out of Lincoln County, North Carolina, according to Charlotte police. Police believe 2 shooters may have been involved. They said 2 persons of interest, a 17-year-old woman, were taken into police station for further investigation. Oh, a 17-year-old and a woman. I thought it was just a 17-year-old woman, which, I mean, probably would have raised a lot more questions with the initial suspect being almost 40, but, I mean, we'll have that conversation at another time, probably. We now have 2 people of interest at the police station that are being questioned right now. Chief Johnny Jennings said during a presser, and we have confirmed that the individual that was set up, that we were serving the warrant, was... I'm starting to talk like Joe Biden again, man. Come on, man. All right, let's try this again for the podcast. And we have confirmed that the individual that was set up, that we were serving the warrant on, was the individual who fired the initial shots and was deceased in the front yard at the end of all of this. 3 officers from the U.S. Marshals Task Force, 1 deputy and 2 task force officers were killed in the shootout. The Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department confirmed to Fox News Digital that an officer from its department also died. Now, I'm seeing conflicting reports about this because I've got another article here that says that there were 4 who passed from the CMPD. A total of 8 law enforcement officers were shot, 3 CMPD officers and a U.S. Marshals Task Force officer were injured and are still recovering from their wounds. So, I mean, this is a person who was not ready to go out without a fight, I can say that. And not a lot of other details that go along with this. I've been with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department for 32 years. I can't remember where 3 law enforcement officers were injured and also 3 that were killed in the same incident. The CMPD initially reported that numerous officers were shot at the scene in the 5,000 block of Galway Drive, which is in the Shannon Park neighborhood. So, and even still, like, I have always been an advocate of, you should have your firearms prepared in case that there is a situation where the government goes tyrannical. Our friends on the left do like to remind us, though, that you're never going to stand up against the U.S. Army. Look, I'm going to tell you right off the bat, if I ever am in a position where I have to stand up to an agent of the government, I am fully prepared at that point to know that I'm not going to make it out of it that alive. Because they're just going to keep pulling more people up and more people up and more people up. I don't know if this particular gentleman had that thought in his mind or if he thought that, yeah, I'm just going to start shooting and I'm going to take on the government people off of that. But yeah, that's one piece of advice that I've always given off the fact that, I mean, if you are preparing to stand up to the U.S. government, you are preparing to not make it out of that alive. I know, again, if I ever, God forbid, get into that situation, I'm already ready. Okay, and apparently I did misread the headline on the second article here because, yes, it does say 3 marshals and 1 officer. I was understanding it was 3 marshals and 1 local police officer. So, that is what we have for that. Let's talk about the protest. We are going to start with that with a video from Harvard University of the American flag being lowered and the Palestinian flag being raised in its place. Thank you, Breaking 911, for the video. As I always say, I will give them credit. They are using a different protest chant than, hey, hey, ho, ho, the thing we don't like has got to go. Credit where credit is due. Boy, am I sure that this burned a lot of people up. And I am not a big fan of the, well, I mean, I'm a big fan of it if it's what people want to do, but the pageantry that goes around the American flag, if it's supposed to be this sacred religious symbol of Americanosity, I've never been in that situation. I appreciate the American flag and what it stands for, I do. But if people want to go back and raise a different flag, that's between them and the institution that they're around. Harvard is a private institution, even though it gets a large amount of public funding. So these protesters coming out and raising the Palestinian flag is really between them and Harvard. Harvard seems to have capitulated to it, and a lot of people are mad about that, but it really is between them and the school. Let's be realistic about that. If it was a public building, yes. There are certain rules of decorum that have to go along with public government buildings and how they raise the flag and raise the pageantry, but this is a private building. It's stupid, and these people, a lot of them, And I've seen reports and I've seen videos of people that they have no idea what it is that they're protesting and why. And why they're cheering for the fact that this flag is being raised up here. I think it's incredibly asinine, but they're free to do it. Show the world what you really are. Let's read from ABC 8. Police are now breaking up pro-Palestinian protests on VCU campus. Arrests are being made. This is, by the way, where I'm starting to believe and see that this might not be something that was organized for an election year. I had my thoughts about that at first when these things started popping up, but I don't know. I think that this maybe just kind of got away from everybody here. From Ryan Nadeau. Now, the people who are doing it, I think, are the same people who were encouraged by certain of our friends in the government. And again, on YouTube, I can't say much more than that. But again, you go off and you get free reign for a year, 4 years ago. What did they expect them to do when there was something else that came up that they believed in so passionately and vehemently? From Richmond, Virginia, police are working to break up a pro-Palestinian protest advocating for a ceasefire in Gaza in Richmond on Monday night, making multiple arrests and deploying chemical agents on protesters as they tore down their encampment. This kind of goes on to what I said about the Hunger Games when I said that it would probably be the MAGA and the progressive wing of the party that would be out in the districts, and it would be the establishment, both Republican and Democrats, that were taking over the Capitol. When you're standing up against the establishment, they don't care how you vote. You can hold up your Democratic registration all you want, and they'll still pepper spray you. The protest outside the Virginia Commonwealth University James Cable Library began earlier in the day on Monday, April 29th, following several other similar protests across the nation. Individuals gathered on VCU's Monroe Park campus carrying signs of Free Palestine and Ceasefire Now, among others. 8 News team members on the ground witnessed VCU, police in riot gear, create a police line around 8:30 p.m. exiting from a bus that had been staged near the protest encampment. Now, Virginia Commonwealth is a public university. That's one thing to keep in mind too. And I've had some discussions on X earlier today discussing the fact that because a lot of these protests are happening at private schools, Columbia, Harvard, places like that, that the school shouldn't be calling the police on any of this, which, I don't agree with to a certain extent. Your first order of business is to keep your students on your campus safe. But there are some people, especially in the libertarian camp, that believe that no, these private universities have no business calling the police. Instead, they should be hiring millions of dollars of private security to come back in and take care of what's going on to this, to show and put their money where their mouths are. As far as that goes, I understand the sentiment that comes behind that. Again, I don't agree with it. I do understand the sentiment to it. But as far as like Virginia Commonwealth, or if something were to happen at like the University of Wisconsin in Madison or any other UW campus, I pointed this out to one of the people I was discussing this with. In most states, a public university's on-campus security is the state patrol of the particular state that the school is in. So in those cases, they really wouldn't have much of a choice other than to utilize the public assets to that. And this one at VCU would be the same thing. They most likely, if they operate anything like the UW system does, they are an extension of the Virginia State Patrol. Soon after, a VCU alert was sent out calling the protests violent, and an unlawful assembly was declared. Police then moved on the protesters, working to break apart their lines. Some were seen wearing gas masks. And we've got just a line of things like that coming down here. I'm not going to get to all of them, but there are different nuances to this, and I know like a lot, especially again the libertarian people that you'll talk to, will say that this is, I mean, the police are cracking down and the establishment's trying to assert itself, and there are extents to where they're proper, and this is a suppression of freedom of speech. And I understand all that. One of the things that bothers me, though, is, especially with people who are paying all this money to go to these schools, my rights do not end where yours begin. Whether or not this is criminal or not depends on the statutes and the particular locality, state laws about picketing, parading, otherwise, and how they clash with the First Amendment. But if I am paying a lot of money to go to a class, to get to a lab, to actually try to get credentialed, and I don't give a goddamn about the conflict that's over in Gaza and Israel, I have as much of a right, because both the fact that I've entered into a contract with the school by paying the money, to get a certain level of education back from them and to have a reasonably safe commute to that area provided by the university, because I paid the money to provide these things for me. I have a reasonable expectation for that. That may fall into the realm of criminal, that may fall into the realm of civil. And I think some of these doctorate candidates probably will wind up suing these universities over the fact that they are damaged in their credentialing and their education coming forward off of this, because of what is happening and the fact that a lot of them are being blocked from going to school, especially if they have certain last names or have certain views about what is going on over in that region of the world. It's an interesting place that we get off of this. See what you guys are doing here. Mogwai says you start bragging about how good things are. This is about the time that life screws you. Well, hopefully that's not going to be the case. Could they have gotten a worse megaphone? It's possible. I can understand the drive-thru at Taco Bell easier. It was started by college kids, but Earpiece Paul was installed to fan the flames. See, and again, I don't know about that for this, because this is politically not good for the people who are in charge of the FBI and the DOJ at this point. So I don't know if Earpiece Pete is actually out there or not. Yeah, even private schools get public funding, that's correct. Mogwai says, hey Pete, they're coming to break up our lines. I don't do that shit, but I got a stash you can smoke. That will blow your... Oh, the picket lines. Never mind. Let's check over on the Rumble side. Let's see what we've got going on there. Nothing over on the Rumble side. Few lurkers, but nothing really going on over there. Let's see, what else do we have? From Reuters, police arrest scores of pro-Palestinian protesters on U.S. university campuses. So we'll have kind of a list of where this is going on. Pro-Palestinian protesters were arrested on a handful of university campuses on Saturday as activists vowed to keep the movement, seeking a ceasefire in Israel's war with Hamas, among other demands. Indiana University Police, which is also a public institution in Bloomington, said it emailed a statement that 23 protesters were arrested there. Where else are we going? Mass State Police, in a statement, said that they helped clear a protest at Northeastern, also a public institution, and that 102 protesters who refused to leave were arrested and will be charged with trespass. Arizona State, obviously again public institution, arrested 69 protesters. So, interestingly enough, all three of the listings that were listed here were public universities. No word thus far that we've seen that any of this is happening at private. Although, I guess at Emory in Georgia, which is a private institution, they were doing some of this as well. But a lot more of the shutting down of the protests on public universities, I see. On X, Khaleesi says, breaking Georgia police shooting at students and university professors. Students and professors at Emory are being shot at with rubber bullets in America for standing against Israel. This is a foreign government's interference into universities. I don't know that I would go that far. Again, the first and foremost responsibility of these universities is to keep the people safe that are on the campus. Let's have a listen. So that's interesting. Again, the caption with this I do still think is a bit hyperbolic. But I do see where they're coming from this. Let's grab one from Fox 5 out of Atlanta. Protester shot with taser during Emory protest. I might have to refresh this one. Ooh, come on.
Whenever you're ready, just tap me.
I will.
Okay, that is a bit excessive.
Charles III.
Point blank when the guy's already immobilized? Come on. Greg Abbott weighing in on this one here, reading from Newsweek. Greg Abbott issues new warning to pro-Palestinian protesters. Some of this is falling into the states' rights realm of things where there are different localities, different laws that go along with this, and Greg Abbott is telling the world that he is going to keep peace on the universities. From Natalie Venegas. Greg Abbott issued a new warning to pro-Palestinian protesters at the University of Texas at Austin on Monday. Also, again, a public institution. College students in recent weeks have been at the forefront of pro-Israeli and pro-Palestinian protests since the Israel-Hamas war began. You know, it's a little bit funny. I honestly thought that the big civil war that certain newscasters who wear a beanie keep telling us is barreling down on us. I honestly believe that was going to be between MAGA and the establishment, or progressives in the establishment. I did not think that this was going to become an Israel and Palestine thing. I didn't think that we were going to be fighting a, quote, civil war in our own country over a conflict that's happening 4,500 miles away. Let's see. Protesters also called for a lasting ceasefire amid a rising death toll in Gaza, particularly among civilians. On Monday, protesters gathered at UT Austin's campus to set up an encampment in protest of the ongoing war and demand that the college divest from business affiliated with Israel, as it follows similar protests that have occurred at Columbia, in New York City, and elsewhere. However, the protesters were met with Texas Department of Public Safety officers for a second time in 5 days after last week's protest prompted a similar response. In a post to X, formerly known as Twitter, Abbott shared a warning to protesters on Monday where he wrote, "No encampments will be allowed, instead arrests are being made." And again, as far as the university goes, that is state property, so if you are told to leave and you do not leave, that is trespass. I mean, it's the same with the private property for like Harvard and Columbia and places like that, but that comes under a different set of rules, and it would involve Harvard, Columbia, places like that actually filing a complaint with the local law enforcement to do. Whether or not they do, or whether or not they have, I don't know, or if they're just letting this continue to go on, but let's see. Dual Helix says, those are paintball guns shooting pepper balls. Yes, they are. Remember, when was that? It was one of the protests. It was pre-Summer of Love protests, because I remember the video came out and I was still working in Madison at the time. When all the St. George protests happened, I was working in Janesville. And I, for the life of me, can't think of what it was that they were protesting. But there was a big protest. And the riot officers threw the tear gas grenade at the guy. The guy picked it up and threw it back at them, and then they nailed him in the nads with a pepper ball. And I kind of laughed a little bit. I probably laughed more than I should have. Let's see. Yeah, that taser thing was out of line. He hit him in the kidneys to try to get him to piss himself. That I didn't know that was a strategy for that. Thank you for the insight on that, Dual Helix. I heard about a PO or something, manned with American soldiers. A pier, yeah. Yeah, they're doing a supply pier in Gaza, which totally, 100% is not going to be used as a launching point for American insertion into that conflict. That's totally never going to happen, you guys. That one I don't know that I can say on YouTube. I think that might be a little bit further than what we can say. Mogwai says, Benjamin Netanyahu really gives two shits about what Becky is screaming between sips of her half mocha, half coconut. 2% milk frappuccino. That is oddly specific. Pomnuria hates, I'm guessing, Abbott? Probably. I don't really hate a lot of people. I'm mostly indifferent. This is funny. The world of competing complaints. NBC News. Jewish and pro-Palestinian students at Columbia University accuse school officials of discrimination in competing complaints. From Alicia Victoria Lozano and Melissa Chan, students at Columbia have filed dueling discrimination complaints as confrontations between pro-Palestinian protesters and counter-protesters continue. By the way, I'm not a huge fan of Abbott either. He's a little bit too bushy for me. Combined, the two complainants underscore how political tensions over Israel's military operations in Gaza since Hamas terrorist attack on October 7th have become personal for thousands of students in the U.S. No, it shows that progressive college students believe that they can appeal to authority to get the authority to get rid of everybody who they don't like. A class action suit filed Monday in the Southern District of New York accuses the university of violating safety protocols by allowing extremist protesters to intimidate Jewish students and push them off campus because of safety concerns. A separate complaint filed Thursday with the Education Department's Office for Civil Rights accuses the university of failing to protect students who have been the target of extreme anti-Palestinian, anti-Arab, and Islamophobic harassment on campus since October 9th, 2023. The harassment includes receiving death threats, being called terrorists, and other slurs, experiencing harassment while wearing keffiyehs or hijabs, and being the targets of doxing campaigns, according to the complaint. Well, yeah, don't send death threats. That's a bad thing to do. And that's actionable. Freedom of speech goes only so far. Once you get to a call to action, yes, that's actionable. Don't do that. That's a bad thing to do. But it's still funny that they're both trying to file complaints with the authorities at the exact same time. Which reference? What did I miss? No, I don't watch enough movies. I'm going to find out what movie that was after the stream. Alright, anyway, let's keep going. Northwestern announces an agreement with the pro-Palestinian protesters, so maybe a bit of a diffusing. We'll see. Do I have an author on this one? Yes, I do. Chris Tye and Adam Harrington. Helix says, I think they have every right to protest and call people names, just don't block the road or sidewalk or cause violence. I think they're dumb as rocks, but they still should be able to protest. Absolutely. If you believe in something that deeply, then yes, you should be able to protest. But again, once you start making threats of violence or actual calls to violence or arms, or, again, like I said earlier, when you start impeding on somebody else's rights, that's where some of the problems start to come in. Evanston, Illinois, Chicagoland. Northwestern announced Monday it had reached an agreement with a group of students who had been protesting for several days on campus in support of Palestinian cause. The protesters have been camping in Deering Meadow on the Evanston campus since Thursday morning. They've been calling for the university to divest its interest in Israel, echoing protests at many universities around the country. Yeah, well, that's been a thing since Ilhan Omar got into Congress, and a little bit before. Organizers in the Northwestern protests have said they plan to occupy the area until Northwestern divests itself from companies that support Israel amid the ongoing war in Gaza. By the way, I was not able to verify this and get a story onto the stack for this, but apparently in one of the universities, when the police came in to try to clear out the protesters moved into the dean's house and barricaded themselves inside of that. I don't know which university. I have to go back and listen to the article or the video that I was listening to on that earlier while I was counting oil. No other university, to my knowledge at least, has been able to secure wins this great, said Northwestern junior Abi Nimagata. Under the agreement, announced by Northwestern President Michael Schill, Provost Kathleen Hagerty, and Vice President for Student Affairs Susan Davis, the protests on Deering Meadow will be allowed to continue through the end of the spring quarter classes on June 1st. However, only one aid tent may remain mounted. The others must be all taken down. Northwestern also said only students, faculty, and staff will be allowed in the protest area, so they can't go and bust people in. I have not seen Men in Tights, by the way. That is correct. I've wanted to see that movie since I was in like 3rd grade. And one of the other people on the bus started quoting from it, but I have not seen it. No, that is correct. On the issue of the demand for divestment, the university said it will provide a conduit to engagement with the investment committee of the Board of Trustees by reestablishing an advisory committee on investment responsibility in the fall. It will include students, faculty, and staff. Translation, they're not going to do it. The university will also answer any questions from the campus community about specific holdings. So, we've gained one ceasefire here. Will it be lasting? Nobody knows. And for the title, students at prestigious Paris University occupy campus building in pro-Palestinian protest. From Jeffrey Schaefer and John Lester. Students in Paris, inspired by Gaza Solidarity encampment at campuses in the U.S., blocked access to a campus building at a prestigious French university on Friday, prompting admin to move all classes online. Now, what I said earlier about your rights are not allowed to impede my rights. Once you start impeding other people's rights, you were in the wrong. All the rest of that is between the protesters and Emmanuel Macron's French government at that point, because they do operate under different laws and a different constitution than we do. The protests kicked off a day of drama at the Paris Institute of Political Studies, known as Sciences Po, which counts President Emmanuel Macron and Prime Minister Gabriel Attal among its many famous alumni. Protesters first occupied a central campus building and blocked its entrance with trash cans, wooden platforms, and a bicycle. They also gathered at the building's windows, chanting pro-Palestinian slogans and hung out Palestinian flags and placards. Later Friday, pro-Palestinian and pro-Israeli demonstrators faced each other in a tense standoff in the streets outside the school. Riot police stepped in to separate the opposing groups. Just remember, French people, you don't have a First Amendment over there. And while I don't see Macron ever cracking down that way, if he chooses to, good luck. I wish you well. As night fell, a dwindling group of pro-Palestinian protesters refused to budge, ignoring police orders to evacuate the street and warnings of possible arrest. Eventually, demonstrators came out of the building carrying a large Palestinian flag to cheers from the protesters who had been supporting them outside. They then started to stream peacefully away from the area watched by police. Jeez. I'm not that old. Although I have watched Power Rangers on a black and white TV. I was at a friend's house. We always had a color TV when I was growing up, but one of my friends, when I was in middle school, still had a black and white TV. It was interesting to watch. Among protesters' demands was that Science's PO sever ties with Israeli schools, which is, the same thing that Northwestern was talking about that they're not going to do. In an email to students, Science's PO administrator, Jean Basseres, pledged to hold a town hall meeting in the coming weeks and suspend some disciplinary proceedings against students in return. Students committed to no longer disrupting courses, examinations, and other activities of the institution, the email said. The Gaza war was sharply divisive in France, which has the largest population of Muslims and Jews in Western Europe. France initially sought to ban pro-Palestinian demonstrators after Hamas's surprise October 7th attack on Israel that sparked the war. Anti-Semitism has surged. By the way, since I know who this person is, because I recognize the screen name, this person actually probably should get the mod sword. I know who the person is. I just kind of thought of that just now. Alright, let's keep going here. So yeah. If Macron decides to crack down on you, you don't have the same protections as a lot of these students in the US do. Ilhan Omar actually getting into this. Now, Ilhan Omar's daughter is in Colombia in the protests. She may actually be leading some of these here. So it's really no surprise that she is getting involved in all of this. Fox News reporting, watch far-left Representative Ilhan Omar and her daughter, who was arrested for rioting, embrace anti-Israel agitators at Colombia's encampment amid nationwide campus takeovers. The squad member laughs unhinged mobs for their bravery and courage as chaos reigns. Ilhan Omar participating in an anti-Semitic protest? Color me shocked.
Thank you. Oh my God! Yes, so we're family. What's up?
Yeah, who's shocked that a congresswoman who's made her famous career calling for the extermination of Jews in Israel? Color me shocked that she is involved in these protests. But with that being said, she's called for some very, very personal things, and CNN decided to sit down with a Jewish senator and ask how he feels about it. Let's listen to Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders.
Senator, I do want to ask you about something that your friend and colleague, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, said when she visited Colombia this week and she supported the protests.
I think it is really unfortunate that people don't care about the fact that all Jewish kids should be kept safe and that we should not have to tolerate anti-Semitism or bigotry for all Jewish students, whether they are pro-genocide or anti-genocide.
Some Jewish students are pro-genocide. Are you comfortable with that?
So, I'm sorry, someone?
She said some Jewish students are pro-genocide.
I'm sorry, what? I'm sorry, I was just resting my eyes. I don't know what it is that you said. Down with the man. Socialism for all.
Is that something that you're comfortable with that?
Well, I don't know exactly. Look, what I think the essential point that Ilhan made is that we do not want to see anti-Semitism in this country. And I think the word genocide is something that is being determined by the International Court of Justice. But this is what I will say. I don't think there's any doubt that what Netanyahu is doing now, displacing 80% of the population in Gaza, is ethnic cleansing. That's what it is. Pushing out huge numbers of people. And now we're looking at the possibility of an attack on Rafah, where people have gone for so-called as a safety zone. So what's going on there, again, to my mind, is outrageous. And as you've indicated, I strongly oppose U.S. Funding for Netanyahu's war machine.
President Biden has said,
we're not going to listen to McConnell. Here is essentially what McConnell's going to say. That's why we're not going to listen to him. Plus, that has nothing to do with what we're going here. Yes, I know that Tucker Carlson wants to fundamentally change the GOP. But all I want to do is say, slow down, you Democrats. Mitch McConnell, everyone. But she is facing a censure. And it might actually happen. Because you don't need Senate approval and you only need a simple majority in the House from Axios. Ilhan Omar faces new Republican censure threat. Translation, Republicans pounce. A House Republican is preparing a resolution to censure Ilhan Omar for referring to some Jewish students as pro-genocide during a visit to Colombia last week. The GOP-controlled House has repeatedly voted on past resolutions to censure and punish anti-Israel progressives for inflammatory rhetoric, including Omar. During a visit to Colombia last Thursday to show support for a pro-Palestinian encampment at the university's campus, Omar was asked by Fox 5 New York about alleged anti-Semitic incidents that spurred by the protest. I actually met a lot of Jewish students who were in the encampment. I think it's really unfortunate that some people don't care about the fact that all Jewish kids should be kept safe, the Somali-American lawmaker said. She added, "We should not have to tolerate anti-Semitism or bigotry for all Jewish students, whether they're pro-genocide or anti-genocide." Don Bacon of Nebraska said he's working on a censure measure, telling Axios talking about pro-genocide Jewish students is wrong. I kind of agree with him there. I do. I mean, even if I was as radical as Ilhan Omar is, I feel like I would have at least worded it differently. You know? You are a member of Congress. You should have some command of the language to know that, hey, if I say this, it's just going to piss a lot of people off. Not that it would affect her in her district, but you get where I'm going with that. Mogwai says, "Help, McConnell is frozen up again. He buffers more than real audio in 1998. All right. Last one on the protests, and then we'll move on to the thing that I've been filibustering against talking about for this entire stream, but it is newsworthy, and it does affect what happens coming up in November. So, God help us, we've got to talk about it. But let's do one last one on the protests here. WTOP News, we call ourselves a liberated zone. Israel-Hamas protests continue at George Washington University for a 5th day. That is a private institution. Pro-Palestinian protesters removed barriers around an encampment at George Washington University on Monday as demonstrators continued for a 5th day, according to a DC university. It carries on at a time when colleges around the U.S. are working to clear out encampments of pro-Palestinian student protesters with no end in sight to the war in Gaza. Yeah, and Benny Boy over there is not helping anything with that either. Protesters next to the encampment at George Washington University's University Yard breached and dismantled barriers used to secure the area early on Monday, the university said. The metal barriers were stacked in a pile at the center of the University Yard, according to WTOP's Lynn Bui. She said the entire yard was covered in tents, about 100 of them. I gotta get to the Discord, because I do remember a tab that I wanted to put up here that I didn't wind up putting up here. The entire yard was covered in tents, about 100 of them on Monday morning. One protester told we call ourselves a liberated zone. Guys, this is Chaz 2.0. And my thought on this one here is now they call this the liberated zone. Be sure to talk to one of us before entering. And my question there is, what do you guys think the password is? Unfortunately, I can't quote anything out of the Discord, but I had a little bit of a fun exchange with my my little buddy Midget B over that one. The only thing they have left to do is spread a little bit of topsoil over cardboard and try to plant stuff on there. Which still to this day was one of the funniest things I've seen in the culture war ever. The Chaz people trying to garden. Oh, man. So, there's your protest news. That's what we have there. Pomneria says that looks more like Huska Park in La Crosse before they came through with the bulldozers. I didn't see that, actually. I don't know which one Huska is. And I live in that area somewhere, so... Not gonna tell you where, but I live in that area somewhere. And Mogwai says, Liberated was very exciting. In fact, it was intense. You know, just for jokes like that, one of these times I'm actually going to get a sounder board, and I will make sure to put the rim shot onto there. Alright. Okay, we put it off long enough. Now we get to go talk about the Trump trial. So, I'm going to start off here with The Guardian, which I have the original article, or the live article right now, but I took an archive of it as well and was interested by the fact that one of the points was not the same as it was in the live article. Which tells me, well, I know that there was a stealth edit, obviously, but it apparently didn't go to the narrative side of things. But let's have a little bit of read. The Guardian. Trump's hush money trial. Key takeaways from opening statements. Let's have a look at this one here. Do I have an author? Hugo Lowell, in New York. Trump was confronted Monday with the unsavory details of his alleged attempt to illegally influence the 2016 election. Pay attention to that line right there. I don't know why I'm pointing at the screen. You guys can't see it where I'm pointing up there. But pay attention to that line right there, because that'll be important as I explain what's actually happening here. as the first criminal trial for the former president got underway in New York City. Trump has pled not guilty to 34 counts of falsifying business records where the hush money payments were recorded as legal expenses to cover up the affairs just weeks before the election. Here are the key takeaways, and there are 3. Prosecutors immediately focused on the 2016 election. The Manhattan DA's office sketched out from the start of their opening statements that Trump committed one crime, the falsification of records, in the furtherance of a second crime, to violate campaign finance laws, which, that is a stretch. Which is what would elevate misdemeanor crimes to felonies. The prosecutor, Matthew Colangelo, presented to the jury that Trump's catch-and-kill scheme with the National Enquirer was entirely geared towards helping the Trump 2016 campaign. Colangelo contended there were 3 parts to the alleged conspiracy: that the National Enquirer would run positive coverage, the National Enquirer would attack political opponents, and that the National Enquirer would act as the eyes and ears for the campaign to detect and suppress negative stories. This case is about a criminal conspiracy and fraud. The defendant orchestrated a criminal scheme to corrupt the 2016 presidential election, and then covered up the conspiracy by lying in his New York business records over and over again. Colangelo said, "Trump appeared uncomfortable." During much of Colangelo's opening statement, Trump appeared uncomfortable in his seat, with his brow furrowed, while the unsavory details of the alleged affair and his boasts about grabbing women's genitals in the infamous Access Hollywood tape, which, by the way, has no bearing on this case, and I went over that when these charges were first filed, so I'm not going to beat that one to death again. I went on like a 20-minute diatribe on that when this first came out. But part of the Access Hollywood tape that was read out verbatim, when Trump remarked he could grab women by the P word, caused Trump to frown deeper and fidget in his seat. The next 6 weeks were expected to be a test for Trump to keep his composure. And number 3, and this is where they changed it. Trump's lawyers meandered. Todd Blanche, the lead Trump lawyer, tried to present several themes to the jury, but his arguments at times seemed to meld together and were hard to follow. The point Blanche tried to stress was that Trump had nothing to do with the hush money payments, and how it was all arranged because Trump left it up to Michael Cohen, which actually will be a point in the conviction, because intent has to be proven. Blanche also suggested Trump did nothing wrong in trying to influence the 2016 election, and these are very, very charged words, the way that they're putting this here, in part because the catch-and-kill schemes are not illegal. Entering into NDA is perfectly legal, Blanche said. But other parts of his opening statement seemed bizarre. Blanche tried to portray Trump as a family man. Yeah. No. No. Even the most ardent MAGA supporters know better than that. Which felt jarring against the affair allegations, and Blanche once added Trump as a man, like him, oddly with no follow-up statement. But let's look at what they changed here. It's a similar argument, but I think when they did the edit, they were trying to make it look like Blanche didn't know what he was doing. Number 3, in the archived article for the defense opening statement, Trump lawyer told Todd Blanche's main theme to the jury was that Trump was not involved and unaware about the specifics of the hush money payment. Trump had nothing to do with generating the 34 checks. The hush money and the additional compensation to Cohen was paid through installments or the alleged falsified entries on the ledger, Blanche said. Blanche also contended that Trump did nothing wrong in trying to influence the 2016 election, including through a catch-and-kill scheme, because that's how modern-day politics are functioned. Yeah, you can see where the propaganda was spun in the live article versus what was archived previously. Entering into an NDA is perfectly legal. Companies do it all the time. The opening arguments from Blanche underscored what could be a strategy from Trump's legal team to at least unlink the falsification from the campaign finance aspect that would reduce the alleged crimes to just misdemeanors if Trump gets convicted. And that's what's important. And realistically, I do believe that that's possibly what the Guardian didn't want to come out, is the fact that these two things could be unlinked somehow. Falsification of business records in New York is a misdemeanor crime. Two things have to be proven in order to get a fair conviction off of this. Number one, intent. If Big Don goes out and says, okay, I have this coming here, just do what it takes to make it go away. You still have some level of intent, but it's a stretch to come back out and try to say that he intended to have these payments put out and pointed out as a campaign expense or some other sort of legal expense. But I would like to see as well if there can be a proof somewhere that there were campaign donations that were used for this, because I don't necessarily see where this is a campaign finance violation, especially if he was paying up out of his own pocket to do this. You probably still falsified the business records, but if you take away the campaign finance aspect of it, it's a misdemeanor. Interestingly enough, to listen to some of the people talk about this trial on various forms of social media, you get the same sense, and it's the same thing that we went through with the Clinton trial, except coming from the other direction, that this trial is about whether or not Donald Trump committed adultery with a porn star. It's not. It's a business finance case. Much like the impeachment of Bill Clinton had nothing to do with what he and Monica Lewinsky did in the Oval Office, but several counts of perjury in front of the U.S. Congress instead, which was also probably a stretch at the time. So, I am very interested to see where this goes and what happens with this. Let's see. Do people still read the National Enquirer? That was one of the other things, too, that I wondered right from the beginning of this. Like, I've seen the National Enquirer, I've read the National Enquirer, and I know that it's still in the supermarket newsstands. I don't think that I've opened the National Enquirer since I was in middle school. Is he still not allowed to talk? Yeah, we do have, I've got that story up on here. He's actually been held in contempt as of today because of that. He's a lot of things, but family man is not one of them. No, that it is not. Mogwai wants to know, it depends on what Donald's definition of is. Alright, let's keep going. From Politico magazine, and this one popped up today, so I've not pre-read this one. The Trump trial takes a turn. David Pecker's testimony delivered a win for the prosecution. Supreme Court is hearing in D.C. was another story. From Chalder McHugh. The prosecution in the Trump trial got what they wanted from the former American media CEO David Pecker this week. A concession that the hush money payments he made on behalf of Trump were done in order to help Trump's campaign for the presidency. Over the course of 5 days, Pecker made more than a few assertions that were useful in the case against Trump. He testified that he made catch-and-kill deals with the former Trump Tower doorman and former Playboy model Karen McDougal to keep up potential bombshell stories quiet in the midst of an election. All were direct torpedo hits to the defense's opening statement on Monday, in which Trump's lawyer Todd Blanche argued that any and all hush money payments were to keep negative stories from reaching Trump family's eyes, rather than the voting public. Prosecutors want to prove that the payments corrupted the 2016 election. Trump's lawyers want the jury to believe that they had little to do with politics and everything to do with Trump protecting Trump's family. I think it's kind of in the middle, honestly. I'm not going to sit here and try to tell you that what happened had anything to do with trying to do the politics. It's a matter of whether or not it was a campaign finance violation in the first place, is what's at question here. In the midst of his testimony, Pecker provided new details about Trump's 26... By the way, given the fact that we are talking about hush money payments to a porn star, how unfortunate of a name is it for the CEO of the National Enquirer to have a name like that? The Mogwai says, okay, the third grader in me is laughing every time you say Mr. Pecker's name. I didn't hear anything else. In the midst of his testimony, Pecker provided details about Trump's 2016 campaign and White House operations. Pecker detailed a thank you dinner that Trump hosted for him at the White House in July 2017 for his help, keeping these stories private. It's your dinner, Pecker testified. Trump told him. When Pecker arrived, Trump also inquired as to how Karen McDougal was doing. I think that they're doing this on purpose, by the way. That they're continuing to leave that name in here and repeating it over and over again. I have seen that movie. The former publisher of the National Enquirer tabloid also testified as to Trump fixer Michael Cohen's insistence that Trump has then Attorney General Jeff Sessions in his pocket, altogether painting a picture of the former president as a man willing to bend the rules and regulations to his personal and political benefit. The prosecution's successful week in Manhattan court was made all the more important by another legal proceeding about 250 miles away in Washington. In a hearing at the Supreme Court on Thursday concerning Trump's claims of immunity from federal criminal charges, Trump's team had a shockingly good day. While legal observers generally assumed the court would swat down Trump's argument that the former president should be immune from prosecution relating to his time in the office, at least 3 justices, Roberts, Kavanaugh, and Gorsuch, suggested that the court would at the very least have to send the case back to lower courts to determine just what evidence special counsel Smith could bring to trial. That's in addition to 2 justices, Alito and Thomas, who appeared to fully accept Trump's claims of presidential immunity. Alito went so far as to put forward an argument that not granting full presidential immunity from prosecution would in fact make the president more likely to commit crimes in an office to stay in office. Even if the court doesn't entirely endorse Trump's insistence that he's fully immune, sending the case back down to a lower court could end any hope that prosecutors had to bring it before the election. That's a victory of sorts for Trump if he wins in November. The decision would, for all intents and purposes, stop him from being prosecuted for his attempts to overturn the outcome of the 2020 election at all, given that he'd be able to shut down the work of the special counsel as president. I don't know about that, because I think that there would be provisions in place to prevent that from happening, especially if there's already a special counsel investigation in place. That's part of the reason that they put a special counsel into place. Now, as far as the immunity goes, I do agree with the idea of presidential immunity, but it has to be very narrow. And in this case, I think that we have reached the point of narrowness to it, because we have double jeopardy to consider when we look at this. Number one, because he already was impeached and tried in the Senate for it. So now they're attempting to come back out and retry this and litigate it in a civilian court. And number two, as the Donald has pointed out, and several other presidents have pointed out in the past until it became politically convenient to go back and use it against somebody that they don't like, is the fact that presidents do commit crimes while they're in office. Oftentimes they're war crimes. I've accused W of this since I started following politics. And his criminal daddy HW, for that matter. But there is also an extent where it would be nearly impossible for them to do their jobs. In certain instances, if they had to sit down and worry about being put in prison the second that they step out of office. I don't want a president who's able to hold somebody down and forcibly violate, let's say, that woman. There are certain words, again, that trip the algorithm on YouTube that I don't want to go in and say. I don't want a president to be able to do something like that. But as far as it comes to espionage and American domestic security, I don't really so much care about foreign security and things like that. Yes, there are provisions that need to be made. That's why I think, again, that this needs to be... I think that there needs to be a presidential immunity level, but it has to be extremely narrow. like almost on a case-by-case basis. Oh, look, we have more about Mr. Pecker. And with next week's scheduled to feature testimony from additional witnesses who have yet to be identified, the two sides are digging in. Trump's lawyers are trying to undermine Pecker. Okay, I lost it at that one. And other witnesses in order to stick it into their arguments. Oh my god. That none of the payments were politically motivated. The prosecution, meanwhile, seeks to tie all the hush money payments to malfeasance related to the 2016 election. Legal observers have likened the trial largely about falsifying business records to getting Al Capone at tax evasion. But the events of the week revealed that it's suddenly more important than originally thought. It's the only case that will conclude before the presidential election. If the pressure wasn't ratcheted all the way up before, it certainly is now. So, that is what they say with Mr. Pecker. Trump's former attorney has a warning for him about testifying. We will listen to Tim Parlatore, and I will weigh in on my thoughts about personal testimony.
Do you think Trump ultimately testifies here? What's
He
your
better
sense?
not. That'd be stupid.
I don't think he should. Will he? Obviously, that's his choice. That's a decision that really comes down, to the wire, and based on how the trial has progressed up to that point of, is it worth it? Is it worth taking the risk to have him testify, or do they think that they've made their point without it?
Do you think it's,
And I personally would suggest that he probably should not.
does it increase or decrease the chances of a conviction if he testifies?
Oh, I think it would significantly increase, because if the jury disbelieves him on anything, however small, that's something they're going to hold against him and be much more likely to convict.
What we're hearing.
All right. Self-incrimination. Self-testimony. Generally against it. Actually, honestly, even though it wound up being in his favor, when they put Rittenhouse on the stand to go testify in his own defense, if you were here at the time, you saw me screaming, because I got a chance to live stream. It happened on a Monday. The Rittenhouse testimony. And I was even then back there screaming, don't do it. It's a trap. You do not want to wade into a defense attorney's trap and cross-examination. Don't do it. Stop. Step away. Again, it wound up turning out well for him, but in most cases at this point, and I know that the prosecuting attorneys are doing this, and part of it is they're trying to needle Trump to get him to think that he needs to get up there and testify in his own defense, because they want him to say something where they can throw another contempt charge at him. And get it all up on TV too, because this is a state case and they can televise it. But no, you should not. You should absolutely not testify in your own defense, unless there are very, very, very specific factors that only you can testify to. This is not a case of that.
Do you think Trump ultimately...
We have the Fifth Amendment for a reason. And that's one of the other things that they want to do too. Because it's one of the things that our friends in the anti-Trump movement are obsessed with. This Trump person pleaded the Fifth 72 times. Donald Trump, in his testimony, pleaded the Fifth 92 times. He doesn't want the people to know about this. No, you have a right against self-incrimination. If the prosecution has the goods, they can go and dig it up themselves. They don't need your help. Another one here. Trump's lawyer on New York courts. I don't really have hopes that high. from Lawrence Forza. Alina Habba signaled she's not optimistic. The New York courts, where the former president's hush money trials take place, will do the right thing. But I don't really have hopes that high at this moment that the New York courts will do the right thing, that the jury will do the right thing, Habba said in an interview on Wednesday on Newsmax's Greg Kelly Reports. It's Newsmax, of course. I mean, that's totally unbiased. There's a reason we never see Newsmax on here. We're in a blue state, as you know, Greg, and I think that's everything's by design. We're in a case that was 8 years old, over the statute of limitations, was denied by Cy Vance, the former Manhattan DA, and then brought only after President Trump decided he was going to run for office, she added. Habba, who's not representing Trump in the hush money case, has frequently taken shots at the numerous indictments brought against her client. Jury selection for the New York criminal trial ended last week, and witness testimony began this week. And that is part of the problem, especially in a hyper-polarized political situation. And again, I mean, this is something that I've been saying since the lock her up days. Okay. What district are you going to try this in? You think Hillary Clinton committed crimes as Secretary of State. What district are you going to try that in exactly? Where you're going to find a 12-person unbiased jury that everybody else in the country, from the bluest of blue places like California, New York, and the reddest of red places like Wyoming and Missouri and Arkansas, are all going to accept the outcome of this, no matter which way it goes, by the way. Yes, I think that they potentially stacked this so it would happen in New York. But what venue are you going to change it to that you're going to get an outcome that half the country is going to accept? I mean, you're already in a venue that half the country is not going to accept the outcome of it. If it goes the way that Habba assumes it's going to go. What are you going to do? Try it in Wyoming? Well, New York and California are going to riot over the fact that it's a jury that's filled with Trump people that want to see him innocent. What are you going to try in Alabama? Same thing. Hey, go try it in Illinois. And your Wyoming and your Alabama people will riot in the same thing, saying, they're persecuting him, they're persecuting him. Especially in a high-profile case like this, like, everybody in this country knows who their former president was. Even the Amish at this point. Where are you going to try him? That's unbiased. This is why we haven't done this in 200 years. No matter which way this case goes, half the country is going to be all butthurt and angry about the outcome. And some of that was by design. Alright, I got a couple op-eds over here that I just want to look at, coming from opposite directions, CNN and Fox News, given ideas on how this is going to go. Both of these, by the way, are against the prosecution. So we're going to start with CNN. The opinions expressed in this article are the opinions of the writer Jim Walton and Deanna Paul, and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of CNN, Contemporary, Turns Pages Productions, or your host, Jay Edgar. With this serious misstep, prosecutors might be handing Trump a get-out-of-jail-free card. Let's listen. Editor's note, Jim Walton and Deanna Paul are former prosecutors in a private practice at the New York law firm of Walden, Mockton, and Haran. The presiding judge in Donald Trump's Manhattan trial told prosecutors last week that they could grill the former president on a myriad acts unrelated to the charges he faces in his election interference case should he decide to take the witness stand. A few days later, New York's highest court overturned the sex crimes conviction of Hollywood movie mogul Harvey Weinstein. The connection between the two unrelated prosecutions might not seem obvious, but it's there. And the recent dramatic developments in the Weinstein case demonstrate why the presiding judge in the Trump trial, Juan Merchan, needs to reverse his ruling allowing Trump to be questioned about proven misconduct from other cases. Why? Those cases are not on trial. If he doesn't, Trump could have an easy path to having a conviction and the case tossed out. Trump faces 34 felony counts of falsifying business records to cover up his alleged efforts to interfere with the 2016 election. The theory of the case is fairly straightforward. In October of 2016, the then Republican presidential candidate's campaign was on the ropes. No, it wasn't. Because video leaked from Access Hollywood program had gone viral, showing him bragging about his celebrity gave him license to grab women by their genitals. Around that same time, two women, former Playboy bunny Karen McDougal and adult film actress Stormy Daniels, came forward with lurid stories about their affairs with Trump. Prosecutors alleged that he didn't want revelations about the Tawdry liaisons to derail his White House ambitions. Trump, they contend, agreed to buy the woman's silence, and he and his associates falsified business records to cover up the payments. He went on to narrowly win the election to the U.S. presidency. The trial of the now former president got underway in earnest last Monday, and after the first week of testimony, it's clear prosecutors have the goods on Trump. Not really, but David Pecker, the former publisher of the National Enquirer and a close Trump associate, painted a textured picture of a catch-and-kill scheme entered into by the former president and his longtime attorney and fixer, Michael Cohen, and the prosecution is just getting started. Cohen, who played the crucial role in the Daniels payments and reimbursement, is expected to take the stand as a star witness. Trump, for his part, denies any wrongdoing. Trump's public behavior, including his continued attempts to attack Michael Cohen and other expected witnesses, as well as his recently more animated courtroom demeanor, suggests he may be worried about a possible conviction. Why? It would actually probably boost him in the polls at this point. As well he should be, considering the strength of the case instead of relying on the strong case. They have, however, prosecutors have indicated they may be planning to cross-examine Trump on things that don't and shouldn't matter to this trial. So, it'll be interesting to see if he actually takes the stand. On the other side of the aisle, from Fox News, again an op-ed by Greg Jarrett, the opinions expressed in this article are the opinions of Greg Jarrett and not necessarily the opinions of Fox News, Contemporary, Turn Pages Productions, or your host Jay Edgar. In a case against Trump, Manhattan DA Bragg's Hocus Pocus case exposed on first day. Hocus Pocus is a meaningless distraction or illusion that's intended to fool. That neatly summarizes Alvin Bragg's case against Trump. The DA hopes to snooker a Manhattan jury into convicting the former president with a bag of legal tricks. In most courtrooms, the chicanery would never work, but in this Trump-hating venue, the defendant's jury of purported peers are likely predisposed to accept magic for magic's sake. They may want to believe that there's no white rabbit behind Bragg's back, despite the pink ears peeking out around his coat. The first sleight of hand happened the moment the lead prosecutor addressed jurors during the opening statements. On Monday, Assistant DA Matthew Colangelo, formerly Joe Biden's number 3 official at the DOJ, told the panel, "This case is about a criminal conspiracy." Really? Then why is Trump not charged with that, even though Colangelo repeatedly accused the defendant of participating in a criminal conspiracy? The word conspiracy cannot be found anywhere in Bragg's indictment. You know what else can't be found in the indictment? And I did read all the 34 charges on this. Campaign finance violation. Now, that's important because he's being charged on 34 counts of falsifying business records in an attempt to cover up a campaign finance violation, upgrading them to felonies by using them to cover up another crime. But he's not actually charged with campaign finance violation. It's not there because there was no criminal conspiracy, but that didn't stop the prosecutor from deceiving the jury by arguing about an uncharged crime. Like a skilled magician, he hopes to the pretense will fool him. Not content with one canard, Colangelo slipped another one from his sleeve More than once, he accused Trump of election fraud, conveniently ignoring the fact that the Federal Election Commission examined Trump's payments to Stormy Daniels and determined there was no fraud because the money conferred did not qualify as a campaign donation. Federal prosecutors who investigated reached the same conclusion. So did Bragg's predecessor. There was no crime. So, I'm going to continue to watch this and see where this goes. It will be interesting. The Mogwai says, I would pay to see Trump's lawyers asking if someone's grits heat up faster in Mr. Pecker's stove, to be honest. Let's move it to Alabama. Nowhere in the grit-eating world I just watched that movie, like, last week. 2 weeks ago. Alright. The gag order. Let's look at that one here. I'm going to jump around just a bit. A judge in the hush money trial threatens Trump with jail after holding him in contempt for violating a gag order. From Zoe Richards. The gag order is kind of a stretch, too. It's legal, but it's dubious. The judge presiding over Trump's hush money case on Tuesday held the former president in criminal contempt over a series of posts on Truth Social he said violated a gag order on barring any attacks on jurors and witnesses, and warned Trump he could be jailed for further violations. Juan Merchan ruled Trump in contempt for 9 violations of his gag order, with a fine of $1,000 for each instance. He warned in the decision he would not tolerate further violations of the order, and said if necessary and appropriate under the circumstances, he would impose an incarceratory punishment on the former president. The judge explained that because the fines, which are limited by state law, were relatively little in comparison to Trump's wealth, they might be unlikely to deter him from abiding by the court's order. While Merchan said he would prefer to impose commensurately larger fines, the state constitution and the U.S. Constitution would actually like a word about that. He instead had to consider whether, in some instances, jail may be a necessary punishment. The gag order prohibits the former president from making or directing others to make public statements about known or reasonably foreseeable witnesses concerning their potential participation in the investigation or this criminal proceeding, and public statements about any prospective juror or any juror. Merchan said on Tuesday that Trump must remove 7 of the posts at issue from his Truth Social account and 2 other offending posts from his campaign website by 2:15 p.m. on Tuesday. The judge also said in response to Trump's complaints about the comments of expected witnesses, Michael Cohen and Stormy Daniels outside the court, he might consider modifying the gag order to remove them from its protections if he finds it necessary in the future. Cohen said in a statement in response to the judge's decision that the small fine is irrelevant. Merchan's decision elucidates that this behavior will not be tolerated and that no one is above the law. Merchan had indicated on April 23rd he was not impressed by the arguments from the defense, telling one of Trump's attorneys that he was losing all credibility when he suggested that Trump was exercising caution to comply with the gag order. Alright, Palmyra is taking off. I will talk to you later on. Yeah, no, we're not going to do a Thursday show. Prosecutors from the DA's office had accused Trump of violating Merchan's April 1st order at least 10 times since it went into effect, including the post that called expected witnesses Cohen and Stormy Daniels sleazebags. Another appeared to be a quote from Fox News personality Jesse Waters that read, "They're catching undercover liberal activists lying to the judge in order to get onto the Trump jury." So, unfortunately on the gag order, I have not looked into that one enough. I've had my opinions on the gag order, especially given conflicts of interest between the judge his family and the fact that he's on this case. I have yet to see a call to action against any of the witnesses, which is typically what a gag order is used for. And let's be honest, Cohen and Daniels are kind of sleazebags, but he went on to fundraise for it, that's for sure. From Politico, Trump quickly fundraises off judge's contempt ruling in hush money case. From Jessica Piper and Lisa Kaczynski. Trump's campaign immediately sought to capitalize after the judge, in his New York criminal trial, ruled him in contempt of court, the latest example of how the former president's campaign has flipped negative legal developments into a financial boost for his re-election bid. A Democrat judge just held me in contempt of court, read a Tuesday morning email soliciting donations from Trump's National Committee, a joint fundraising committee that includes Trump's campaign and the Republican National Committee. The email continued, I was fined $9,000 for 9 gag order violations. They want to silence me. They think they can bleed me dry and shut me up, but I will never stop fighting for you. The email included a link to donate. The email came just hours after Merchan ruled that 9 social media posts and statements from Trump violated a gag order. We heard about that and this one here. The contempt ruling is a flashpoint for Trump, who has long used his legal troubles as motivation for fundraising, ordering Trump to pay a fine for gag order violations. Is one of the more significant rulings against Trump since the trial began, and gives the former president fresh ammunition to rail against the legal system and his political opponents. Yeah, we can't do a weekend show either. Actually, I'm booked up all weekend as well. It's also a clear and simple message that can be more easily understood by supporters than appeals based on complex legal motions. They're trying to silence me. Well, and that's a part of the issue that we go through with this every time too. We hear, we've got him this time, it's a slam dunk, it's over, and then he goes out and puts an email out and solicits another $100,000 and another 2 or 3 percentage points in the polls. Again, just like I said on the change of venue thing, there is a reason we have not done this in 200 years. Find me a jury that's unbiased enough to try a former president, and a venue that's unbiased enough to get an unbiased jury. I challenge you to that. So, alright, let's look at the immunity fight. From Politico, Trump immunity fight turns Supreme Court textualist topsy-turvy. We heard a little bit about this when we talked about the Pecker testimony. I'm going to look just a little bit into this one here. From Josh Gerstein, the Supreme Court's conservatives often accuse liberals of inventing provisions nowhere to be found in the Constitution. Now the fingers are pointed in the other direction. At the attention-grabbing arguments this week over Trump's claim of sweeping presidential immunity from criminal prosecution, the 6-member conservative bloc seemed largely unconcerned by a key flaw in Trump's theory. Nothing in the Constitution explicitly mentions the concept of presidential immunity. That is a fair point to make, by the way. Everything that is there is implied. Trump's lawyer told the justices that the founders had, in a sense, written immunity in the Constitution because it's a logical outgrowth of a broadly worded clause about presidential power. I don't necessarily buy that either. And that in and of itself is based on the fact that there was no way our founding fathers writing the Constitution could have foreseen, and I know that they like to use this too, we couldn't have foreseen assault weapons. There was no way for our founders who wanted a limited federal government to foresee the massively expansive federal government system that we have in place today that does require some level of presidential immunity. 2 years ago, conservatives relied on strict interpretation of the Constitution's text and original meaning to overturn the federal right to abortion. But on Thursday, as they debated whether Trump can be prosecuted for his bid to subvert the 2020 election, they seemed to contend and engage in a free-form balance of exercise where they weighed competing interests and political consequences. Some critics said the conservative justices, all of whom purport to adhere to the original understanding of the Constitution, appeared to be on the verge of fashioning a legal protection for former presidents based on the justices' subjective assessment of what's best for the country and not derived from the nation's founding document. So, again, with this, I go back to what I said originally. There should be some level of presidential immunity, but it has to be extremely narrow. All right. What else do we have here? I got started a little bit late because of the stupid CAPTCHA on the live chat. Let's talk DeSantis, briefly. From CBS News, Trump and DeSantis, once GOP rivals, meet in South Florida to talk about 2024 election. From Aaron Navarro, Finn Gomez, and Olivia Rinaldi. Florida man Ron DeSantis met privately with former President Trump for several hours on Sunday to talk in part about fundraising ahead of the 2024 general election. Several sources familiar with the meeting told CBS News. The meeting was made at the request of DeSantis, according to a senior Trump source with knowledge of the meeting. An anonymous source, if you will. It was arranged by real estate investor and longtime Trump donor Steve Witkoff. The meeting was first reported by the Washington Post. DeSantis was playing golf at the Shell Bay Club, a private club in Hollywood, Florida, and agreed to have breakfast with Trump, according to the source familiar with the meeting. In its first meeting since the two men, wow, I can talk at this point. It's the first meeting between the two men since DeSantis ended his presidential campaign in January and endorsed Trump in a video announcement. DeSantis has not campaigned for Trump since ending his own bid. In a private call with supporters of his campaign in February, DeSantis had voiced concerns Trump and Republicans could be outspent 3-1 this year, according to one of the call's attendees. So, they've been a little bit tight-lipped about this meeting. I don't think that this has anything to do with the vice presidency. Now, I am not sold on voting Trump, and I've been open about this. I probably wouldn't. But what I will say is this. If DeSantis is on the ticket, that's a poison pill for me. I will not be following him anymore. And I will actively campaign against him at that point. With more of a, I will stay home and I'm not going to vote for this ticket. I will always tell you to vote your conscience. And if you think that Trump-DeSantis ticket, expand the government and total authoritarianism, beats a Biden-Harris ticket, expand the government and total authoritarianism, that's what it's going to be. My bullet points of what I need to see to vote Trump, they're out there. They're open. I've been open about them. If DeSantis is on the ticket, I'm out. All right. The TikTok ban. From CNN, Biden just signed a potential TikTok ban into law. Here's what happens next. Biden signed a bill on Wednesday that could lead to a nationwide TikTok ban, escalating a massive threat to the company's U.S. operations. Congress had passed the bill this week as part of a wide-ranging foreign aid package meant to support Israel and Ukraine. It was approved by the House on Saturday and by the Senate on Tuesday. The legislation poses the most serious risk to TikTok since U.S. officials began raising concerns about the app in 2020. Under what is now U.S. law, TikTok is forced to find a new owner within months or be banned from the U.S. entirely. You're going to be stupid. And I'm going to laugh. No, at least he actually got the good sense to pull back on the menthol ban, which was also insanely stupid. But when elderly people go back to try to ban something, they make it cool for the younger generation who already thinks that it's cool. As far as I go, I do not use TikTok. Now, there may be a possibility in the near future where clips from Contemporary and my one-off videos get onto TikTok. I'm working with somebody on that right now. Excuse me. But that will be done outside of the purview of this. And, of course, if you want to clip anything on Twitch or somewhere else to post onto a site like that, I have no problem with that. You can use my image. I mean, I only ask that you let me know and that you don't try to deliberately misrepresent what I'm saying with a false edit of it. Because if I am deliberately misrepresented, I will report it as falsification. That is, as soon as I find it. But I've always erred to the side of less government on this. I would actively encourage you not to use TikTok. But I'm not going to use government law and lawfare to do so. I'll tell you how stupid it is, how asinine it is, and how little dance videos don't really do anything to improve your life. And as far as the government goes, if they want to ban it from their own devices, that's their prerogative as well. They own the devices. But it is unconstitutional, right from the start. And the vast majority of people who are going to be using the service don't have data that's really going to help the CCP. Once again, if you want to do something with your own phones, etc., that's on you. I would encourage you not to use the service, but again, it's on you. Let's see, where are we at right now? 145? Let's do the Marjorie Taylor Greene stuff, and then we'll move on to the end show. So, from the Hill, all eyes on Greene threatened to oust Speaker Johnson. From Michael Schnell and Mike Lillis. Speaker Johnson returns to Washington this week, celebrating several recent policy victories, but also facing a renewed threat to his gavel from a small but unpredictable group of conservative rebels infuriated by his leadership style. Johnson received widespread praise from leaders in both parties this month after muscling two high-profile proposals through the House, an increase in aid for Ukraine and an extension of Washington's warrantless spying powers. But his decision to champion those controversial policies and to forge deals with President Biden and Democrats to get them done has sparked new backlash from a handful of hardliners vowing to topple him from power. Leading the charge is known Democrat plant Marjorie Taylor Greene, who introduced a motion to vacate resolution last month after Johnson endorsed legislation to fund the government and now is escalating her threat to force it to the floor. Thomas Massie and Paul Gosar have endorsed her effort. With no pressing must-pass legislation on the immediate schedule, that internal battle is set to take center stage on Capitol Hill, a bitter Republican-on-Republican fight coming at an inopportune time for GOP leaders who are looking to unite the party ahead of the November elections. I'm warning you. And I know we've only got, 7 months until election time? But I'm telling you right now, if you do this again, and I told you people what Mike Johnson was from the beginning, from the time that he got announced, and I started reading his record, his legislation, and how he got into office and how he got to this point. When people started saying that he was the Antichrist and the person who launched the insurrection, I said, you guys have set yourself up a poison pill. Mike Johnson is another neoconservative, warmonger, foreign aid, big spending government Republican. And what has he been since he's been in there? Another foreign aid, big spending, pro-war, neoconservative Republican. But you have one vote to lose in the House, one defector, that will bring you to Speaker Hakeem Jeffries, presiding over a Republican majority in the House. And 7 months with a Democrat Senate and a Democrat President. Choose your words wisely. I'm going to get some popcorn to watch this. But I know that this is going to end in a way that you guys don't want this to end. Alright, let's finish out the show here. And we're going to start, as we always do, with Dual Helix's favorite segment. And we are right at the end right now, too. So let's head over on to that here. And we will bring the screen over to look at the rules of acquisition. And then we'll do things I like and things that I hate. As everybody knows, the rules of acquisition, the cornerstone for the Ferengi religion of hypercapitalism. And of course, making sure that the people on Ferenginar also conduct hypercapitalism as well. For if you follow these 431 rules, about 170 of them being in Star Trek canon, then you have social credit going into the afterlife. After you pass away, you go to the Divine Treasury and you use that social credit to bid on a better life. Or a worse life, depending on how you use the rules of acquisition in this life. Every week we go over one of the rules, and by popular demand, we will be starting over, once we finish up here, for Dual Helix. We did the 293rd rule of acquisition last week. We are on the 294th rule of acquisition. A bargain usually isn't. From DS9 novel The Pet, which I have not read, but here's the thing. Sometimes you get a good deal. Sometimes you get a bargain. Sometimes the price is just too good to be true and you come back out and brag about it. 4 months later, it's broken. And all your friends come out laughing and you say, hey, how's that good price? How's that good bargain? I've done this with cars numerous times over here, thinking I got a smoking deal only to walk away with a lemon. Now, there is some merit to coming out and haggling, of course. That's part of the doctrine of the rules of acquisition, is to try to come out with the best price possible. But if a vehicle is going for $500, there's a reason for it. You didn't get a smoking deal. You got something that's going to get you by for a little while. Until you can find something else, then maybe spend a little bit more money on it. So, and even then, a lot of the times you're going to put it more than the $500 initially to try to keep the thing running. So, keep that in mind. Wheel and deal, of course, but a bargain, somebody that's willing to let go for bargain basement prices usually is not a bargain. And Quest Fanning has joined us to the end. Good evening. Happy birthday. Thank you, Quest Fanning. Let's do some things that I like and some things that I hate. Things that I like. As was announced last week, 2 weeks ago, I bought a Nintendo Switch for the first time. I have a modern console for the first time since like 2002. And they're about to retire the thing too, so I might have got it at the wrong time, but there are some things that I wanted to play on this. And I got the games that I wanted to play, which we will be playing on stream, Mario RPG, as soon as we're done with this iteration of Diablo 2. That will be our Wednesday night stream. I can't wait for that. And I do have to double check to see if it's my capture card that's wrong, or if it was the HDMI cable that was hooked to the Switch, because that HDMI cable didn't work in the TV, but I plugged a different one in, the one from my Roku, and it worked fine. But while I was doing the online thing, and I mean, I'll tell you right off the bat, even if it's only for a year, $50 is expensive in Biden's economy. But I had the money, partially from tax returns, so I decided to spend the money this year on the Nintendo Switch Online, the premium version of Nintendo Switch Online, which is $20 a year for the basic and $50 for the premium. And it opened up a lot of nostalgia for me. Now, included with the online, you get 6 different emulators built right into the Switch, and legal because they're all Nintendo products, loaded up with the most popular games from each console release: NES, Game Boy, Super NES, Nintendo 64, GBA, and Sega Genesis, because Sega was appropriated by Nintendo after its downfall, after the end of the Sega Saturn era. Or Dreamcast era, I'm sorry. Dreamcast came after Saturn. So that's why Sonic appears in Smash Brothers now. That's why a lot of the other Sega properties also appear on various Nintendo games at this point. But it was definitely a trip down memory lane. Now, I've played with emulators before, fully admission. Only with games that I legally own in cartridge form. But going back in, some of these emulators didn't work, like the Kirby's Dream Land 3. You couldn't see through the water in Kirby's Dream Land 3 on the online emulators. Was one instance of everything. So now they fixed that for the Nintendo Switch. And if you've got it, if you got one of these consoles and you've got the extra $50, like, don't break yourself for this. It's worth giving it a try and actually using it through Nintendo service. One of the big issues, though, and I will point this out, and I figured this out while I was playing, after every major console that had 4 buttons coming from the Super Nintendo forward, the left button on the control side is usually go forward, or I'm sorry, run and shoot. And the bottom button is typically jump. But because of the configuration of the Switch, where the A and B are, well, you've got where your jump button usually is now your shoot and run, and this back button over here is your jump button. Because of the B and A on the Nintendo Switch controllers, and they correspond to the B and A on the Nintendo and the Game Boy controllers. So that is something to keep in mind while you're playing these games, but otherwise it's a very enjoyable time. I'm glad that I picked it up. Alright, other things that I like today. Tennessee has signed a bill allowing armed teachers in school. Tennessee Governor Bill Lee has officially signed legislation that would allow school districts to permit teachers to conceal carry on school grounds. Which was the way to do this, by the way. I know a lot of people that are against this right now are trying to spin this as the fact that the governor has said that now the state is going to be arming the teachers and forcing teachers that didn't want to be armed. That is not the case. If you are in Tennessee and an educator and you already have a concealed carry permit, you have to take additional training to do this for school grounds. But you can now license yourself to carry while you are at school, to be a front line of defense against the kids, if you are comfortable, and it is entirely voluntary. You don't have to do it. If you're completely against guns, you don't have to do it. And if Tennessee ever does go forward and say, no, you as a teacher must be armed, I will stand against that. Unless you are specifically trained as a law enforcement officer, there is no requirement for you to be armed at any time. But if you want to, and you think that you can both pass the tests, get the licensure, and have the mental capacity to keep the kids safe, I do encourage, and all the power to you to do so. So this is definitely good. I like this. From the Daily Wire, Trump says he won't seek retribution against Biden if he wins second term. I have too much respect for the office. With Biden and his DOJ trying to push federal charges against Trump, number one, this was the right answer to begin with, and I've said that from the beginning. We don't use the DOJ to go after political enemies in this country. But Biden's DOJ is doing exactly that. This is the right answer. Hands down, 100%. I think he might be learning. Maybe he watched my video. I have no idea. Quest Fanning did share on Twitter and X. And remember, of course, that at the conclusion of this live stream, this video, the video with the live stream, with the 635 drop frames, will be set to private. And a new, fresh, clean recording that I've been recording this whole time will be put up overnight to be released in the morning. So there will be a new link for that, and I will text that to Quest Fanning in the morning. And he'll put that out to his 11,000 followers. I know you love to hear that. But yes, it does appear that he's learning. We don't use that office. We don't use the DOJ to go after political enemies. Nancy Pelosi got into it here. Nancy Pelosi snaps at MSNBC anchor over Trump. From Mareed Elordi. Former Speaker Pelosi suddenly snapped at an MSNBC anchor who corrected her during a Sunday appearance on the left-leaning network. Let's watch.
And Joe Biden is doing that, created 9 million jobs in his term in office. Donald Trump has the worst record of job loss of any president. So we just have to make sure people know.
That was a global pandemic.
He had the worst record of
We made him have the worst record.
any president. We've had other concerns in our country. If you want to be an apologist for Donald Trump, that may be your role, but it ain't mine. And he has the
think that
worst.
anybody can accuse me of that.
And Joe Biden.
The Pelosi's and the establishments are starting to lose the narrative, and it's hilarious to see. And they still have to come back down. And I mean, there are people that follow Pelosi who are going to say, yes, Slay Queen, MSNBC is suddenly right wing. But I'll give MSNBC credit where credit is due. If they're going to come back to correct the record, then absolutely do so. Oh, 13,000, I'm sorry. And the last one on things that I like, and we'll move on to some things that I hate here. Biden officials indefinitely postponed ban on menthol cigarettes amid election year pushback. Again, you got to give credit where credit is due, and when they make the right decision, you praise them for it. The idea to ban menthol was a stupid decision. I'm an ex-smoker, and when I did smoke, it was menthol. And occasionally, if I do pick up a pack and then hate myself for it for weeks later, it's still a menthol. No, banning flavored stuff is not going to prevent kids from smoking. I mean, all the propaganda that you put out at this point kind of has, but... And most of the Gen Z, Gen Alpha, etc. are going to move on to vaping in the next however many years. But, I mean, there are as many people out there who preferred Reds and couldn't stand the menthol. I don't know where it is that they thought that this was going to go and how this was going to prevent anything. I know a lot of people have brought in the race issue to it, but they backed off on it. Got the government intervention out of things and let the free market decide who gets to buy what and who gets to succeed and who doesn't. So, and you shouldn't smoke. And even when I do weaken and grab a pack, I know that it's wrong for me too and I shouldn't smoke. And about 10 in, I realized where my mistake was. But so long as you choose to, the government shouldn't get a say in what it is that you choose to put into your body and what you don't. Now let's do a few things that I hate. Another one from The Wire. Study finds that renting is cheaper than buying a home in almost all of 50 of America's largest metros. And to be completely frank, in most of the rural areas as well. Renting has become more affordable than buying a home in 50 of the largest metro areas in the U.S., a recent study reveals. The analysis performed by Bankrate found that it costs about 37% more a month to buy a home than to rent nationwide. The cost disparity is largely a product of rising home prices, increased mortgage rates, a slowdown in rent hikes, a study noted, and an increase in taxes, I would also point out with that. Now, before the prices skyrocketed, even getting a basic $120,000 home in Wisconsin, between depending on what municipality you were in, what local taxes you did, and the state taxes that went along with that, while your regular mortgage payment, principal and interest, usually came out to be less than what your rent was. I mean, $120,000 house, you're well, let's go back the rates up too, but let's say 3%-ish, which was what we got when the rates were prime. $550, $600 a month, which is what I was paying in rent for that place that I lived just outside of Janesville. But once you throw the escrow on for your property taxes and the homeowner's insurance you're required to have on your mortgage payment, then you're looking at sometimes $800, $900, $1,100, depending on your municipality. And the state will get paid. They will make sure of it. So, but even in the big metro areas, the average monthly rent payment is almost $2,000, which is ridiculous. While the average payment on the average $412,000 home is just over $2,700. I am so glad I don't live in an area where that's the average home price, although we're creeping up to that very quickly. Other things that I hate. Patriot Front decided to go back in March again, which means the FBI got overtime. This time in Charleston, West Virginia. Like, does anybody actually buy this? That these jacked guys in matching outfits wearing masks are actual white supremacists? I met white supremacists and they let it all hang out. They tell you who they are, what they believe, and they show their face everywhere that they go. So, and they do this when other protests tend to get out of line as well. So, and just for fanning, by the way, I did just bottle a second batch of apple wine. This is the brown sugar variety. I'm going to label this, I think, tonight and enjoy some of this in 6 weeks. 4 weeks. This one was good too. The other one I had a little bit to learn from, the first batch. I corrected some of the things in the second batch, and I'm going to take some time to try to back sweeten next batch. So, all right, other things that I hate. Well, just a little bit on misinformation. So, a screenshot went around over the weekend showing a New York Post article saying Congress to vote on bill that would criminalize questioning the events surrounding 9/11. Of course, this was not true. because this would run into all kinds of issues constitutionally with the First Amendment. And I know that there is a particular annoyance among government officials and people who believe the narrative on 9/11 to try to suppress this kind of speech. But it's not going to happen. Now, KGW 8 has pointed out again that no, Congress is not voting on a bill that would make questioning the events surrounding 9/11 a crime. I'm all for parody and having a little bit of fun and making wild, outlandish statements off of this. But when you outright come out and make a lie about some of this, it makes it a lot easier for the people who are against free speech to come back down and say, hey, what you've done here is a dangerous this or a dangerous that. And now it's time for us to try to force the law to crack down on it. So we can force a law that would criminalize questioning this, that, or the next thing. By making a false accusation of a bill that would criminalize questioning 9/11, you've opened the door partially to a series of events that would allow Congress to criminalize questioning 9/11. So, no, there is currently not, and that's the other part of this is, geez, don't give these people ideas. Got some Biden stuff here, and then we'll take off for the night. This particular one here, other than my disdain for Howard Stern suddenly being somebody who can talk to the establishment, because I remember listening to Stern when he was the edgelord and he was the edgy one. But this story going around again, look, I'm not going to say that this didn't happen, because I wasn't there. And this would have had to been in 1953-ish, circa, given the age that Biden says that he is. I wasn't there in 1953 to say that this did not happen. But I'm going to say in 53, I don't see a world where two gay guys are going to walk down the street in Delaware kissing each other in public, number one. And then where somebody from the greatest generation is going to be okay with it in 53. Unless, of course, that person is into kissing other men. Which may be the thing with Biden. But typically they were kind of the racist stock of the time. That's what Biden was raised in. I mean, hell, he gave David Duke's eulogy. But let's listen to this story again. See if we believe it this time.
Marriage Act, what the hell is with people with this gay stuff? Who cares if someone's gay? How is it affecting anybody? People in love, it's good, right? Love is good.
My dad said we saw two men kissing one another in Rodney Square when I was going in to get a license. I looked at him and he said, Joey, it's simple. They love each other.
That's it. That's how I look at it. Marriage Act, what the hell is with people with this gay stuff? Who cares?
It's like everybody forgets the instances of this man, this curly-haired man, throwing around the F word on the air in the 90s. I remember. All right. And the last one I'm going to do tonight is this one here. We're going to go with the pause. So, reading from the New York Post, Biden reads out pause instruction during speech to union members in gaffe reminiscent of Ron Burgundy. I don't have video, unfortunately, because New York Post decided they needed to do their ad blocker thing. But from the New York Post, President Biden or Ron Burgundy? In a case of life imitating art, the commander-in-chief blurted out on the stage note, pause, Wednesday, while addressing union members in the nation's capital. 4 more years. Pause, said Biden. 81, a la Will Ferrell's buffoonish newsman character in the classic 04 comedy Anchorman. Members of the North America's building trades unions stepped in and dutifully chanted 4 more years in response to the president's botched cue. It was not immediately clear whether the instruction was included in the teleprompter or in his prepared remarks. No, they were in the teleprompter. 81 million votes, folks. Right there. This guy. Well, that's all that I have for the night. I don't know why I was so mealy-mouthed all night. I think some of it was allergies because I was a little bit plugged up throughout the entire thing, but we powered through, and we got through as much as we could here. So, I think it's time to call it a night, you guys. What do you think? Let's throw some outro music up, shall we? Outro music, of course, provided by the wonderful Stephen Ignoramus. If you don't check him out, I encourage you to do so. It's a great time. I listen to it on Idle. Because of being at work, I don't have a chance to go back and listen to it and be active in the chat, but I do listen to it on Idle. He's a good man. He's a good friend. And I encourage you to go back and listen to him as well. Otherwise, hey, we're going to get out of here for the night. Thank you, everybody who came in and chatted and hung out in the live chat. It's been a pleasure. It's been an honor. And we will see you here tomorrow night for Diablo 2 Resurrected, which is probably one of my favorite games. Starting into a new month and getting through it so we can go on to my favorite game of all time, Mario RPG, on the Switch, the remake. I have tested a little bit of it, and the graphics are incredible, and I can't wait to share that with you guys here. Or we'll be back on Friday with Fallout Fridays, or we'll be back here on Tuesday to see what happens in week 2 of the Trump trial. What happens? Does he go to jail? We don't know. We will see what happens with that. Does he get held in contempt again? What does Michael Cohen say? So many things that we could see off of this. We could see what's happening overseas, whether or not Russia turns the tide on the Ukraine, if Israel goes into Rafah, that's on the table right now as well, or if the campus protests ever do finish up. Take care. Have a wonderful night. We'll see you here next time. Fresh video of the stream up on YouTube in the morning, and audio platform will be up yet tonight, but I think Spotify does wait until the morning to post it up. So, thank you. Take care. Have a good night. Go hug your family. Get some food if you haven't already. Get some good rest, and we will see you here next time for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. And until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.